I don't know if you've had rolls explained to you before, if you play them already and have your own system of doing it, but I want to explain to you how I approach them. This technique is used by fiddle players and wind instrument players, flute players and pipers. The idea is we're playing 3/8 notes, G, F, G in this case. And what we're going to do is continue to treat it as 3/8 notes, but we're going to play 3 G notes. But instead of using our bow to separate them, we're going to use our fingers. So instead of the first, that bow change, we're going to flick our finger, just stop the string. And I'm using a motion where I'm flicking my finger across the string. I used to, when I first started, put my finger straight down and then come back straight up. And you can do it that way, but what that means is that you're making this motion down and you're having to stop and then come back up. Kind of like when we were talking about, hitting that drum head with a stick. When you come across the string with your finger, you can only hit it a very short amount of time. You don't have to worry about making it go down and come back up. You just go across and you've accomplished your mission. So that substitutes for the first bow change. So instead of, we have, and you're going to slur your bow through that. Keep it going the same direction. Then we have the second grace note. And to do that, we're going to take our G finger off and have the F finger down and then put it back on. It's a quick, very short motion. You only need to lift your second finger up enough to clear the string. And it doesn't have to even clear the string completely. Again, all you really want to do is stop the vibration of the string. Now, if you want, you can put your first finger down at the start so that your first finger is already there, and all you have to do is lift your second finger. Or you can put your first finger down as you need it. So the combined effect is, instead of, we go, and we can practice that in jig time. So the motion is, the jig rhythm is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now, I like to get that second grace note to be as short as possible. I want to make it sound like the first grace note as much as possible. As opposed to it being a more pronounced F sharp note, like. You hear that difference? That's one way. Here's the other way. That's up to you how much you want to practice it, and whether maybe you prefer one sound to the other. But that's up for you to decide. But that's how I play rolls, and that's how I play them in jigs and reels. I just find that it's real easy to practice them in jigs because they're naturally in that rhythm. When we go to the reels, the measures are in groups of 4. Half measure is 4/8 notes. And what you'll find is that the roll will take up 3 of those 1/8 notes. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. The fingering is still exactly the same. Okay, so you don't have to worry about that. Once you get this motion down, you'll be able to use it everywhere. So that's a roll on G, or basically any second finger note. We were playing. Now if the note is G sharp, say, the motion's still the same. And it doesn't matter what string you're on. Now, we play rolls on other fingers as well. There's the third finger. So your third finger is playing the melody note A. Then your little finger is going to make that first grace. So instead of, we're playing. And then you're going to do the same sequence with your lower finger. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You want to relax your hand as much as you can. Obviously, I got tense there, so that's okay. We just do it right the next time. So that's a third finger roll, and again, that applies to any string. And what you may find is that on your particular fiddle, certain notes, certain rolls, certain third fingers rolls will be easier than others. And that'll be true with second finger rolls and first finger rolls. And it's just one of those idiosyncratic things. It's just working with your instrument because your instrument will respond differently to each of those rolls. So don't worry about it if you're having a real hard time with one particular roll. It's kind of like everybody has that problem. So those are second finger rolls, third finger rolls. Now the first finger rolls are a little bit easier because you don't have to put a finger down underneath to get that lower grace note. You can use the nut to do that, the open string. So on the E string again. This time what's different is we're going to grace again with our third finger, not the second finger, even though that's the note above. We're going to use our third finger mostly because it's conventional. Most Irish players use their third finger to get that upper grace note when they're playing a roll on their first finger. And then the lower grace note. And together, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now, a lot of people hear rolls as something that kind of happens at the end of that group. Like we're using 3/8 notes, so technically you can think of it as a dotted quarter note, one long dotted quarter note that happens to be separated. And some people hear the roll coming at the end of that. But it's not necessarily the case. When you hear these notes separated and divided as evenly as we're doing it here, it might not sound like a roll when we're playing it this slowly. But as you gradually speed it up, like this, then it sounds more like the roll that you're accustomed to hearing, if you're familiar with it at all. So kind of resist the tendency or the desire to wait until the end of that thing to kind of snap it all at once, like this. You know, I can only do that now because I practiced them by segmenting in the way that we did. Because I have the control in my left hand to do that now. So if I want to go, I can do it. But if you try to do that just like that as a kind of an uncontrolled spasm, it's sort of a hit or miss thing, then it's always going to be a hit or miss thing. And the thing about rolls is that they actually serve a rhythmic function. So you don't want to be playing something like, it doesn't really work in the rhythm. Just go ahead and play it the way that we were practicing it. that kind of a thing. So the way I learned how to do these was practicing very slowly with a metronome. And when I felt like I could do it 100% of the time and my left hand was relaxed, then I would bump the metronome up another notch or two and practice it at that speed. So my idea is that if you practice these with the metronome, gradually increasing the speed, it'll become a natural motion for your left hand. It's muscle memory. And even after years and years of playing, I still have to remind myself from time to time that not to rely on muscle memory, that I actually have to physically perform the role. Otherwise, it ends up being sloppy. It won't end up the way I want it to sound. Now we have the roll on the G, and I should mention that whenever you see that configuration where you've got the group of three and the first and third notes are the same, G, F, G in this case, we can roll that. And the same is true if it's AF or AGA, when you go to the third finger, or FEF or FGF. The middle note doesn't really matter, and in fact you can use that as a variation. So the GFG is rollable in the first phrase of the B part. But another place that we can roll is when we have arpeggios, like in the very last phrase of the tune. We have the B minor, A7, D. So we're playing, so we can actually roll the F sharp. The normal melody would be, we can play, and then we have A, G, A, and that can be rolled. So theoretically, we could roll all the F, G, and A. Like that. Now, you wouldn't necessarily want to do that. Some people might consider that a little bit too much, although I've heard flute players do that. Ends up making a good exercise. It's a good way to practice rolls. Like that. It's all in time, in jig timing.